This guy's a fucking moron. Why are you asking me these stupid questions? And how did you ever become a podcast host?
It's amazing. Anybody can be a podcast host.
We're just the two guys to prove that.
Welcome to Damn It, Jim, the podcast. A fun and fascinating look at the amazing Star Trek, the original series. My name is Dana Smith, and I'm the captain of this adventure. And once again, supposedly manning the science station to help me plot a course, our Vice Admiral of Rambling, my good friend, Dan Calzaretta. Good evening, Dan.
Did I ever tell you the story, Dana, about...
I was like, wow, you're going to start right off the bat.
You know, I think the ramble jar and rambling is what makes this show, for me, really interesting. Not that Star Trek's not interesting, Dana, but...
I think people listen in just to see what we're going to ramble about.
Yeah, well, because let's face it, you know, this is a 50-year-old show, you know, but we make it awesome.
So, Dan, how was your weekend?
Well, I did smoke a chicken this weekend, Dana.
You did say smoke and not choke, right? So I just...
Smoke. I did like a beer can chicken on my smoker.
I've tried that a couple times. It's never turned out as great as everybody's told me it would. I must be doing something wrong.
No, they're not good. But I mean, a beer can chicken by itself is not anything special. But I did have this Peruvian rub recipe that I found. And, you know, you kind of get your fingers in between the breast and the skin. You know what I'm talking about there? And massage it a little bit there, Dana. Get the stuff in there. And then you take a can of beer, about half a can, and shove it up the, I don't know, what do you call it? The orifice?
Cavity.
The cavity, that's it. The cavity. Shove it up the cavity of the chicken. And you stand it up, you know, on the grill or the smoker, in this case, smoker. And then, you know, rotate it maybe every hour or so. Just, I don't know why, just to get in there and, you know, rub on the chicken a little bit more. but it was really good. It was really tasty. And then I had leftovers. So I made chicken salad out of it tonight, like chicken salad sandwich kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you? How was your weekend?
It was good. We Saturday night we saw Wanda Sykes downtown Denver.
Oh yeah, she was just walking around, or
walking around on a stage. Yeah, so that's, she was really funny.
She is funny.
They did something I've heard other people talk about. I know how they did this. You had to take your phone and put it in a unopenable case, and that seals up. So and my smartwatch, I had to take that off as well and put that in the case. So because there is no pictures, no audio to be taken during the show.
Now, was this just some dude outside the theater saying, "Hey, put your phone and your watch in this you know, in this burlap sack," or what?
Yeah. Don't worry, I'll give it back to you at the end of the show. Yeah,
I'll meet you in the alley.
Yeah. No, it's a new thing they're doing because artists are losing, you know, money. They're being recorded and people are putting stuff out on YouTube and other places, you know, and some people are selling it, you know, as bootleg. And
wow. Did you get your phone and your smartwatch back?
You carry it around with you. It's just like in this case.
Oh.
And then when you're leaving, they've got this little device that, you know, unlocks the case.
What if you said, "I don't have a phone on me"? They're going to frisk you? Are they going to do cavity search like the chicken?
Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't going to try it. Yeah, it was funny because she had another comedian come out and do, you know, an opening act. Shortly after he comes out, my phone starts ringing. And I'm looking around going, who the fuck has their phone out? And my wife turns to me and she goes, "I think that's your alarm." So I had to go out. They've got like a little area where you can have your phone released so you can turn it off or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's my life in a nutshell. Yeah. This is the most exciting thing I have to look forward to.
Well, Dana, what are we going to do in 2 weeks when we're done with this?
We're going to come up with something new and exciting.
That's right. We already know what it is. We're just waiting to release that information to the public.
As soon as you tell me, we'll both know. Yeah. Anything else exciting happening, Dan, before we jump into the podcast?
Well, Dana, 2 years ago, almost to the date, we started this podcast, June 9th, 2022.
Wow. They said it couldn't be done. They said it wouldn't last.
Dana, we said it couldn't be done and it wouldn't last.
That's who I was talking about when I said they.
Oh, okay. It's the royal they.
Yeah.
Which is us. I don't know. Whom about which are you speaking of?
Let's not torture the poor English teachers again.
No, it's not English teachers. English teachers are amazing.
We didn't get any messages from geologists or mathematicians, so I think we're okay so far.
They've got a bit more of a sense of humor, I think, especially geologists, I would imagine.
I would think they would have to.
And mathematicians, they don't get the humor because they're just, 1 plus 2 is, divided by 8. And so, I don't understand humor. And that would be math teachers too, not just math professors.
Weren't you a math teacher?
No, never taught math, Dana, because I can't do math. Oh, he's stupid to the 12th power.
Wow.
All right. So, Dana, we pissed off math teachers, English professors, and geologists, although not the geologists. We determined they did have a sense of humor.
No, there are some geologists that suck. Trust me.
They got rocks for brains. The math guys are like, I don't understand. What is that? Is that supposed to be funny? I don't get it. Maybe we should get on to the listener comments, Dana.
Yeah, okay. That's a good idea. Who else do you want to piss off tonight before we even start the show?
Oh, well, I'm sure when we get into it, there'll be some people we anger.
Well, last week, Dan, we discussed the Savage Curtain, and we did kind of savage it a little bit. Our good friend Pam McClung sent us a couple comments on Facebook. She said, doesn't seem like much of an experiment or honest learning experience for that rock alien, since Lincoln and Surak were surely of their own making, as Green, Zora, and Genghis Khan and the Klingon most likely were. And I kind of mentioned that.
Yeah. She said it better than you did, though. So
that's why we're using hers and you cut mine out. Yeah. So
see, if you just would have put it like that, Dana, I would have understood what you were saying.
Lynn Price said, evil people aren't going to play nice. While Surak had good intentions, there are rules in warfare to defeat an enemy first. Then you can negotiate peace. Wow. I don't want to get Lynn mad at us.
No.
John Skamika said the smoldering pile of lava rocks is the Horta's first cousin on his mother's side.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, I like the Horta better. Grace Buckingham said, one of my least favorite episodes, but still watch this over short leave. Our good friend Yvonne said, you guys are hysterical.
That's awesome.
And Steve Hoza, who's written to us several times, shared some signed pictures that he had of Colonel Green and Genghis Khan.
Wow.
That's pretty cool.
Now, Genghis Khan, he didn't even have one line in this episode, did he?
No, but he was an important character.
I guess he was when he battled the stunt child.
Yeah. Grits Chase said that the ugly rock monster reminded me of Pizza the Hut. Our friend Joseph said the evil opponents chosen for Kirk and his party were some significant figures from history, but the choice of Zora always made me chuckle. She experimented with the body chemistry of subject tribes on Tiburon. That's it? That's her mark on history? Maybe the author hit a patch of writer's block. So, Dan, did we get any emails or phone messages, YouTube messages?
Yeah, Dana. So for the phone, it's a Google Voice number, right? So people call in, it limits them to 3 minutes. We've talked about this before. I don't know who made these calls because I didn't have time to listen to them, but there were 8 calls and it clogged up the Google Voice number. Like it wouldn't take anymore. It said several more people tried to call in, but they couldn't get in because all the recording space was totally filled up. It was the weirdest thing, Dana.
Wow, it's kind of like needed a plunger to clear out the lines.
Yeah, one of those snake things you get in there and you unplug whatever the big, Fatberg. Remember the Fatberg videos when they were out?
Oh, yeah. It's scary.
Oh, scary, yeah. But somehow I got to clear out the Google Voice Fatberg. I'll deal with that this week to try to get that worked on. But anyway, we did get several emails and YouTube messages. So JD Lewis is back, Dana.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
I've been missing JD.
I know. So JD says, awful episode, but wonderful podcast reaction. We're nearing the end, so the tide of Schmitter wastewater is rising. Not sure how to take that, actually. Maybe that's Schmitter wastewater that's clogging up the Google Voice number, Dana.
That could well be, yeah.
So Schmidtberg or something.
Schmidtberg.
So here's what JD says. Fun fact. Gene Roddenberry wrote the teaser and the first act only. This, by the way, is referring to, what was last week's episode again?
The Savage Curtain.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, this is referring to the Savage Curtain. Gene Roddenberry wrote the teaser and the first act only, then promptly gave up and handed off the script to Arthur Hindman. I don't blame Hindman for this mess of a script. I blame lazy Roddenberry for making the mess in the first place. Even though I plan to see the podcast to the end, I will miss you guys. You two are the best.
Oh, thanks, JD.
Yeah, JD, make sure to listen in next week when we announce what we're doing next. And I hope you remain a listener.
Yeah, definitely.
John Ulikowski posted about Cloudminders. I curse the inventor of two-faced tape. What does that mean, Dana? I have no idea what that even means. Do you?
Is that what was holding up Droxine's outfit? I don't know.
Oh, maybe that's what he means. That makes sense now. We also received a comment from Doc Avenger 1560 going all the way back to season 1, episode 28, The City on the Edge of Forever.
Oh, wow.
I know. Weird. I wonder if they just found the podcast.
Yeah, well, more power to them. They're plowing their way through.
Yeah, they're going to they got a lot of plowing to do because that's a long time ago. So they write, I think the Guardian of Forever is a supreme being. The comments he made at the end, to me, were more poignant because he treated time travel as triviality, and that pissed Kirk off even more. This gives Kirk, let's get the hell out of here line even more gravitas. Thank you, Doc Avenger 1560. Keep listening. And if you listen every day, it'll only take you a few weeks maybe to get through all the episodes. Can you imagine, the person ends up in the hospital. Why are you here? I OD'd on Damn It, Jim, the podcast. Anyway, Dana, that's all I got for this week. This podcast is being brought to you by North Shore Adult Diapers. North Shore offers reassuringly strong protection for even the heaviest control problems and can keep you dry and confident for up to 12 hours so you can live your life with freedom and dignity.
Whether you are attending a baseball game, having dinner with friends, getting on a plane, or just sitting back listening to the Damn It Jim podcast, the last thing you want to worry about is incontinence. Don't be trapped at home. Be secure in knowing that North Shore has you covered with a true quality product.
You can even put North Shore's products to the test by requesting up to 6 product samples. And Dana, our listeners can use the code KIRK at checkout to receive $10 off their next order over $50. Go to northshore.com today to place your order or request product samples. This offer can be used only once per customer and may not be combined with other offers.
This is Season 3, Episode 23, All Our Yesterdays. So we see the Enterprise heading toward a planet. Get the captain's log. We have calculated that Beta Niobe will go nova in approximately 3.5 hours. Its only satellite, its only satellite is a Class M planet.
Wow, Class M, really?
Yeah, and it starts with an S, which at last report was inhabited by civilized human species. Now, our instruments show that no intelligent life remains on the planet. That must be where they picked up the writers for Season 3.
Well, except for this episode.
Yeah, well.
Maybe a couple others.
So Kirk, Spock, and McCoy beam down to this planet. Spock looks around. They're inside a building. Spock says there's no sign of sapient life forms. McCoy asks, how could a planet full of people just disappear? And Spock adds, reports deny that they had any space flight capability. So they walk around and they see multiple rooms, and there's these things that look like storage lockers kind of things on the wall. It says, this appears to be an archive or library of some kind. Kirk says, then we're certainly in the right place to find out what happened. And this guy comes up and says, may I help you? I am the librarian. And they seem shocked to see this old guy, probably because they had seen him previously in Bread and Circuses.
I was just going to say, yeah, I think you're exactly right.
So this guy introduces himself.
Mr. Atos, I confess that I'm a little surprised to see you. I had thought that everyone had long since gone. But the surprise is a pleasant one. After all, a library serves no purpose unless someone is using it.
Kirk says, yes, gone. Where did they go? And Atos says, it depends on the individual. But if you're looking to trace an individual, that information is classified. McCoy says, no particular person, just people in general. Where'd they go? And Atos says, you find it difficult to choose with such a wide range of alternatives. And he says he thinks he can help them and ushers them to another room where they find another Atos who says, you may select from more than 20,000 Verism tapes.
What tapes?
Verism. Isn't that what he said?
I don't know. I didn't understand what he said. That's why I was wondering if you understood it.
And he says, I'm sure you'll find something here that pleases you. And then he looks at Kirk and says, you, sir, what is your particular field of interest? And Kirk asks, what about recent history? Kirk says, it doesn't have to be extensive, just answers to a few questions. And Atos says, of course, reference services available at the desk. And he points them to another room where they walk into the other room. And there's another Atos sitting there at a desk. And he turns and sees them. And he looks kind of cranky.
Oh, yeah, he was grumpy. Yeah.
Yeah, he says, you're very late. Where have you been? And Kirk responds, we came as soon as we found out. And Atos says, everyone was warned of the impending nova a long time ago. And he says, they are safe now, and you'd better do the same. And Kirk seems surprised and says, you sent them all to safety. And Atos seems a little agitated now because Kirk's got this habit of asking the same question over and over again.
He does.
Yes, they're all gone except for you three. Of course, I had to delegate my simple task to my replicas. And Kirk offers to take Atos off the planet, and he says he will join his wife and children when the time comes. Atos says, think of yourselves. And he guides them to another room. And he pulls out like a metal disc and sets it on a reader.
Yeah, I mean, it looks almost like a DVD.
Yeah, except for it's a little thicker.
A little thicker, but still, yeah.
And he says, oh, it's the wrong file. And then he says, make your own selection, but remember, you're very late. And Kirk looks at him and says, well, we'll choose it as quick as we can. How long till Nova? And Spock says, 3 hours, 13 minutes. Atos takes Kirk by the arm and says, you'll find this quite interesting over here. And he guides him to a chair and hands him a metal disc.
And it's like the porn section of the library.
He's like, I can tell what you want to watch. So Kirk puts the disc on the stand and he sees a horse-drawn carriage and people in what look like 17th century garb. So we see McCoy look at disc.
I'm sorry, he's looking at a what?
Disc.
Oh, it's disc. Okay.
And it shows a snowy wasteland. And Kirk is still watching the disc when he hears a woman scream.
Oh, I thought the woman screaming was on the DVD he was watching.
Then the woman screams again, and the sound seems to be coming from that doorway behind him. So Kirk gets up and runs to the door, and Atos tries to stop him, saying, I haven't prepared you. And Kirk goes through the doorway and then disappears.
And the other guys are like, good, finally. Let's
Scotty, beam us up.
Yeah, now.
Yeah. And that's how the show ends, Dan. So next we see men in 17th century outfits pushing a woman back and forth as she screams. McCoy and Spock stand by the doorway, then start toward the door as Atos says, you must be prepared. And they go through the doorway and disappear. Only they show up in a frozen land. Wind blowing, snow flying. McCoy asks, what is this place? And Spock asks, where's the captain?
And Spock's like, what disc were you looking at, asshole?
Yeah.
You couldn't have looked at a disc with, I don't know, like a beach, a couple of chairs, a couple ice cold beers.
Yeah. So back in the world that Kirk stepped into, one of the men is about to hit the woman, and Kirk runs up and stops him.
Of course he does.
He pushes the man down, and the man calls Kirk a slave. He comes at Kirk with a sword, and Kirk grabs the other man's sword and defends himself amazingly well, by the way.
See, I asked this question many episodes ago. It had to be in like season 1 probably. Sulu was able to fence in whatever episode that was. I don't remember. Someone will, once we unclog the voicemail thing, someone will let us know. But he was really good with the sword.
Yeah, he thought he was D'Artagnan.
Yeah, right. And now Kirk is really good. And I think back then you said, well, this is probably required training by Starfleet. I think you were right.
Yeah, never know when you're going to run into a sword fight in the future.
Exactly.
So Kirk wins the battle, and the two men run off. We go back to the frozen wasteland. Spock and McCoy check the rock behind them for the doorway.
Hoping that rock would maybe talk like last week.
Yeah, I could see Spock. If all the times for a rock not to talk.
Maybe I could mind meld with this rock.
So Spock tries to heat a rock with his phaser, because that's one of the settings we know.
Right, yeah.
But the phaser doesn't work.
Because it's frozen, probably.
So back to Kirk. A woman in green steps closer to Kirk, and she appears kind of drunk and quite disheveled. She says she thought she was done for when the men caught her stealing his purse. And she moves closer to him, and she's kind of like rubbing his back. And she says,
I took you to be an angler, but you're none of us, are you? Well, you're a bully fine coup for all of that. What a handsome dish you served them, the coxcomb. Ooh.
Dana, I didn't understand a fucking thing she said. I mean, I want our listeners to go back and listen a couple times. What the hell did she just say, Dana?
Yeah, she was doing this like really bad, slutty English accent.
I mean, my accent's probably even better than that one, but
Yeah.
I couldn't understand a damn thing she was saying.
Yeah, well, she said she called him an angler. I was like, does he look like a fisherman? Isn't that what an angler is?
Yeah, maybe it wasn't a sword. Maybe it was a fishing pole he was fighting with.
Maybe she wanted to play with his fishing pole.
I take out the fishing pole and with a little bit of bait hanging on the fishing pole. The angler. I didn't understand the damn thing she said.
Well, Kirk says, you better come back with me to the library. Dr. McCoy will look at your bruises.
That's what he's going to be looking at, huh, Dana?
She says, where's library? And Kirk looks back at the wall he had been standing by and doesn't see a doorway.
No, it's just a wall now.
So Kirk looks around for the doorway, and the woman keeps pulling on his arm.
Pulling on what, Dana?
His arm.
Oh, his arm. Okay.
Yeah. Kirk calls out for Spock and McCoy and Spock call out, and Kirk hears them. And Spock explains where they are and explains how the portal works, because he knows Jim's kind of an idiot. And, and then he explains how he ended up in the Ice Age with McCoy.
Because McCoy's an idiot.
Yeah, because McCoy was looking at freaking frozen tundra. So the woman thinks Kirk is talking to spirits and seems afraid. Just as Kirk thinks he's getting closer to the portal, a group of men advance on him and accuse him of being an accomplice to the woman.
So hold on a second, Dana. We've been led to believe at this point that everyone's escaped from this planet through the portal to some time in this planet's history, right?
Yes.
Why aren't we hearing everybody that happens to be near the portal? It'd be a cacophony of just voices. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm sure that once they go through, they don't stand around by the portal.
But what about anyone standing by the portal? You know what I mean? Or is it just the people who went through?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know. It's like a math problem. Yeah.
Let's see. 2 people go through a portal A. One goes through portal B. And they're traveling toward each other at warp 6, but one's going to warp 3. God, I used to hate those kind of fucking problems, Dana. Ugh.
Oh, yeah. I was like, I'm never taking a train again.
Because they're going to crash. They're going to crash into each other.
So McCoy and Spock call out, and the men back away temporarily, having heard their voices, but still hold their swords on Kirk. I don't know if you noticed, but 2 of the guys were holding their swords across Kirk's crotch.
Really?
Yeah.
Maybe they were worried about him whipping out his sword, Dana. Can I say that?
Whatever you want, Dan. One of the men says, away, away, spirit. Kirk tries to push through and another man steps up and just punches him and knocks him out. So we see McCoy and Spock struggling through the cold. Spock says, we must find shelter. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. McCoy stumbles and falls, and Spock goes to him. And McCoy says, leave me here. Go find Jim. And Spock's like, see ya. Spock says, we go together or not at all. So McCoy says, alone, you have a chance. Now do what I say. And then we see a figure wearing a full-length fur coat, but we cannot see their face.
Right.
So the fur coat turns and walks away, and Spock helps McCoy to his feet. So they follow the person inside a cave where there's animal skins and rocks and candles. Spock puts McCoy on a rock slab and covers him with an animal skin. And he scans McCoy with the tricorder and says, "I'll avoid giving him any medication at this time." Why? McCoy wouldn't wait.
I have a question, though, for you, Dana. So their phasers didn't work.
Yeah.
How does the tricorder work?
Made by a different company.
Okay, that explains it.
He says, perhaps if he's kept quiet and warm, he may recover naturally.
Especially quiet. We must keep him quiet. Let's gag him.
So the person behind Spock pushes back the hood to reveal herself. She's a young, attractive woman. She asks, "What are you called?" And he answers, "Spock." She says, "Even your name is strange. I am Zarabeth."
You know, the thing, though, about her is she isn't like other female characters that we've seen when they first meet someone from the Enterprise. She actually seems normal.
Yeah, she asks if they are prisoners too, and Spock says, "Prisoners?" And Zarabeth says, "This is one of the places Zor Khan sends people when he wants them to disappear." Zarabeth says, "The Tavakron is far away, but I think you come from someplace even farther than that." And Spock says, "That is true. I'm not from the world you know at all. My home planet is millions of light years away." She seems like excited and she says, how wonderful. I've always loved books about such possibilities. And then she kind of stops and seems concerned. She says, "But they're only stories. This isn't real. I must be imagining this. I'm going mad." And then we go to see Kirk asleep in a cell. A guard comes down and an older man in a black robe and hat comes with him. They open this Kirk cell and the old man steps in and starts talking to Kirk. The woman is across the hall and she's like shouting stuff. "Oh, he's the spirit talker." And the guy asks, "Where are you from?" And Kirk says, "I was reading in the library when I heard her scream." And on the word library, the man seems kind of stunned and looks away.
Yeah, like almost afraid.
And Kirk sees this and says, "My lord, the library?" And the old guy gets upset and seems all twittipated and says, "I know nothing of this. Send for someone else learned in witchcraft. I'll have nothing to do with it." And the wench keeps saying, "Witch, witch, witch."
I wonder if this is where Monty Python got the whole witch thing.
So we go back to the cave where McCoy is waking up.
That's unfortunate.
Spock assures him he shouldn't talk or try to move or even breathe, for that matter. So Spock says they're safe and they will attempt to find the captain and for McCoy to rest. So McCoy passes out again. Spock walks away and Zarabeth follows him. And she takes off her fur and we see she's dressed like Jane from the Tarzan movies.
God, totally. Man, that outfit, Dana. But I mean, okay, you're on this planet. It's a frozen wasteland, right? I mean, I know the cave's warm, but come on, you're wearing this underneath that kind of fur coat? You'd still be freaking freezing.
Spock asks Zarabeth to take him to the portal. And she says, "What about your friend?" And Spock's like,
You can have him. But once he wakes up, oh man, he's going to start talking.
Being alone might not seem so bad. Spock says, "Once McCoy is well, you must go through the portal with us." She says she can't. Once she goes through, she is changed, and to go back means to die. She looks at Spock and says, "You can't go back. You've been changed by the Atavakron." Says, "If you go back, you'll die." I'm just keep repeating this because you said you're friends with Jim Kirk, and I know what kind of an idiot he is. So
I have to say it many times.
Yeah. So we see McCoy wakes up. McCoy asks, "Why aren't you looking for Jim?" And Spock says, "We cannot go back. Portal changed our physiological structures." McCoy says, "You mean we're stuck here?"
Oh my God. How does Spock put up with these people?
And Spock nods and says, "And Jim is trapped where he is."
How many more times do you want me to tell this to you, McCoy, in how many different ways?
Back to Kirk. Another guard comes down with I'm guessing it was a bucket of water. The guy says, "Give me your cup." And Kirk grabs the guy's arm and twists it. So Kirk takes the keys off and locks the door and comes around and gives the guy a karate chop.
Of course it would be a karate chop, Dana.
So then the old man comes back down and Kirk grabs the old guy's hands and pushes the cell door open. Kirk says, "You have to help me find my way back to the library." The old guy says, "We cannot go back. The Atavakron has prepared our cell structure and our brain patterns to make life natural unnatural here. To return to the future would mean instant death. Now the writer is pretending we're all stupid and just keeps repeating shit to us. Kirk looks a little stunned and thinks for a moment. He says, your Mr. Atos did not prepare me in any way. So the old guy seems shocked. He says, then you must go back at once. If you were not transformed, you can only survive for a few hours here in the past.
Seems like he's been there for a few hours already, Dana. I mean,
that's what I'm wondering. Yeah.
He was in the fight.
Got knocked out.
Thrown in jail.
It's in the cell.
Yeah, woke up. I mean, it's got to be a couple hours.
Yeah, at least a couple hours have passed.
Yeah.
So back in the cave, McCoy is drinking something from a wooden cup. I was like, Zerbeth is pretty amazing. She's got animal furs. She's got fire. She's got candles.
Yeah.
Wooden cups.
Well, Zarkon, or whatever the hell his name was.
Zorkon. Zarkon's like a antidepressant medicine or something.
Because that's what I need to take watching this. Well, not this episode. Well, this episode is a little depressing, I guess, in a way. But she says he did send her with stuff to survive.
McCoy says, I wonder where Jim is. And Spock says, we can only hope he is well. McCoy says, what do you mean we can only hope? Spock looks at McCoy and says, we've discussed this before. We can't go back. Wasn't that clear to you? McCoy looks sad and says, yes. So Spock says, then perhaps you were too ill to understand what can't get back means.
This part was great.
Yeah, he all but put stupid on the end of that. So
yeah,
that means we are trapped here and this planet's past just as we are, and we'll stay here for the rest of our lives. Now, do you understand, or do I have to beat it into you with a rock? McCoy says,
you listen to me, you pointed-eared Vulcan. I don't like that. I don't think I ever did, and now I'm sure.
What's happening to you, Spock?
Nothing that shouldn't have happened long ago.
We see Kirk walking through the streets with the old guy, and the old guy leads him to the wall where Kirk first appeared and says, this is where it is. And Kirk goes feeling his way along the wall, and then his hand seems to go through the wall. We see Kirk all of a sudden looks a little dizzy, and then he slips into the wall, and we see him come back inside the library.
So do you think, Dana, that people who have been prepared in whatever way that one guy was talking about it, they wouldn't even be able to put their hand probably through the wall, right? They wouldn't even be able to go back through or something?
Yeah, I don't know. Or if they put their hand through, it would like disintegrate or something. Kirk calls for Spock, and when he gets no answer, he uses a communicator to contact the Enterprise. It's amazing, like they didn't take any like his communicator off of him. What, didn't he have a phaser too?
He did.
So that's just in the past. Some guy's going to like kill everybody in the town with it.
Well, it probably doesn't work, just like Spock's didn't work. But yeah, the communicator, that's a good point. Why didn't they take that stuff from him?
So Scotty says, there's only 17 minutes before the sun goes supernova. And Kirk orders him to be ready to warp out.
That proves, Dana, that Kirk would have died, because when they first got to the library, they had like 3 hours and some odd minutes. So it's been 3 hours.
Yeah.
But that also means that McCoy and Spock have been there for the same amount of time.
So Atos comes up and says, it's you. And Kirk says, I need to find the exact disc my friends were looking at. Atos says,
you are evidently a suicidal maniac. I don't understand what you're trying to do, but if you continue, both of us will die. And I, for one, do not wish death.
Actually, I kind of like this line. I thought when he called him a suicidal maniac,
yeah,
I thought it was great. It pretty much described Kirk. At times, I mean.
So Atos says, I don't trust you. I regret what I must now do. And he pulls a little cylinder from his sleeve. So he points it at Kirk. Kirk says, you really don't want to hurt me, do you? You've been trying to save my life. I realize that. Put that thing away. And Atos fires at Kirk, and Kirk falls to the floor. So Kirk's not so much of a psychiatrist there, is he? So
good on Atos, too, for doing that.
Yeah, she had a bigger gun. So we see Spock and Zerbeth talking in the cave. She says, I cannot pretend to be sorry that you are here. She encourages him to eat, and he looks down at a plate of meat. He says, animal flesh. She says, there's not much else. And Spock agrees, then says, what is the source of heat for this cave? She says, there's a hot spring that runs underneath it. Spock says, then a greenhouse could be built. I thought that was a bit of a leap.
And where are you going to get the seeds?
Yeah, sure they're, dig down in the snow enough, you'll find some seeds. He'll send McCoy out for him. Just dig it. Just keep going until you find a spot.
Just keep digging.
Yeah. He takes a bite of the food and kind of looks like a pork rib.
You think they just went down to the commissary and got whatever meat they had down there?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But he's really eating that, though.
Oh, yeah. He's been a vegetarian for a long time. You know, meat really tastes good. So
I was a vegetarian for quite a while.
I was a vegetarian for a little bit. I was kind of like a half a vegetarian.
Were you the veggie or were you the Tarian?
Like once a month, my buddy would call me and say, we got to go get meat. And we would usually go to an Uno's Pizzeria. This is out in Connecticut. They had Uno's Pizzeria, and we would get like the meat lovers deep dish pizza.
Kind of like hide somewhere in the corner.
Snarf the whole thing down. Yeah. Spock says to send such a beautiful woman into exile. Then he stops himself and says,
Cold must have affected me more than I realized. Please pay no attention. I'm not myself. I'm behaving disgracefully. I have eaten animal flesh, and I've enjoyed it. What is wrong with me?
Spock goes to her and holds her face in his hands. They kiss. And Spock says, you are beautiful, more beautiful than any dream of beauty I've ever known. Then he lays her down on the bed. So we come back to Kirk on a cart as Atos is pushing it. And Atos says, stay where you are. And Kirk rolls off the cart, and the cart goes through the portal. So somebody on the other side is going to get smacked by a cart.
I thought that same thing. Like, some poor sucker just walking down the street and this thing hits him.
It's witchcraft.
Son of a bitch, these carts always coming through that wall. What's going on here?
You know what I mean? Can you imagine if you had a doorway like that and you were looking into a different world and they couldn't see you?
Yeah.
And you could like see it on a monitor or something. I would be throwing shit through there constantly and trying to hit people. Yeah.
All the time. I'm with you on that. Yeah. Tomatoes. Nothing to hurt them, really, you know.
I mean, yeah, I'd be pushing like the rolling chairs, you know, I'd push a couch through.
Oh, God, that would be funny. That would be fun. That'd be quite funny, yeah.
There'd be like a pile before the doorway. All the stuff that got thrown through.
Next person trying to go through there. I couldn't get through. I was wondering where my office chair went. Here it is.
Oh, that'd be so awesome. Atos charges Kirk in an attempt to push him through the portal. Kirk nearly goes through, but holds onto the doorway. He escapes Atos's push and gets him into like a full Nelson. And then he says, you're going to help me find my friends. Just then his communicator buzzes and Scotty says, you better hurry up. And Kirk says, give me a few minutes. But if that star starts to explode, don't wait. Warp out.
Oh, we already have a captain. We're gone.
I can barely hear you.
This is a recording. God, I can't do Scotty. I cannot do Scotty. Dana, we've been doing this for, 2 years. I still can't do Scotty.
You know, last week you had a couple minutes where you sounded really good.
Thank you for saying that. But when I listened to the episode, I was like, no, that doesn't sound like Scotty. And the stuff I cut out really didn't sound like Scotty.
He turns his attention back to Atos and he says, they were in a frozen waste. I could hear the wind. So Atos says, all right. It must be the Sarpedian Ice Age.
Like, how would he know that? I mean, there's got to be a lot of discs that have like winter stuff, right?
So he's like, let me look. And Kirk says, we'll both look. In the cave, McCoy is looking down at Spock and Zarabeth.
Because they're like on the floor, right?
Yes, she's kind of like sitting up a little bit, and Spock's like next to her, and Spock is kissing her hand and being all lovey-dovey with her.
And she was smelling his fingers, Dana. Do you think it's meat she smells on his fingers? I mean, she was definitely smelling his fingers. I'm telling you, go back and look at that. 100%.
McCoy says, Spock, you've been dishonest with me. Zarabeth is a woman condemned to a terrible life of loneliness. She would do anything to anybody to change that, wouldn't you, Zarabeth?
I only know that I can't go back.
I know I'm going to try, Spock. Because my life is back there. And I want that life.
McCoy grabs an animal skin and heads out of the cave. So back in the library, Kirk is standing over Atos as he is looking at frozen areas. Kirk tries calling out for Spock and McCoy, but gets no answer. Kirk says it's the wrong one. We see Spock and Zarabeth catch up to McCoy. Spock says, there's no portal here. It's hopeless. So we go back to the library. Atos switches to another desk. Kirk goes to the doorway and calls out. Go back to the frozen land. McCoy and Spock hear Kirk's voice. So Kirk calls, "What are you waiting for?" And Spock pushes McCoy toward the wall.
He just kind of bounces off the wall.
Be so funny. Go through the wall, Doctor. It's like bashing him into the wall.
I just got to push you a little harder.
Yeah. Maybe it's a one-way door. We'll get it. McCoy's like, it's a little bit more over to the left. So Kirk asks Atos what's wrong, and Atos says he doesn't know unless they originally went through together. Kirk yells through the portal that they have to come together. We see Zarabeth walk away. McCoy and Spock turn back toward the wall. Zarabeth looks back, and we see a tear in her eye. You think that thing would have just frozen right away?
Immediately.
Yeah, I mean, barely gotten out of her eye.
Right. Because it's cold there, Dana. It's really cold.
We go back to Spock and McCoy as they come through into the library.
There's no further need to observe me, Doctor. As you can see, I've returned to the present in every sense.
But it did happen, Spock.
Yes, it happened. But that was 5,000 years ago. And she is dead now. Dead and buried. Long ago.
So, Dana, if it were Kirk back in that cave instead of Spock, we would have said that Kirk had another love child, right?
Definitely, yeah.
So do you think Spock's got a little love child in the past?
Yeah.
But now that I think of it, this might actually be Spock's second love child because he may have had one in This Side of Paradise.
Yeah.
Spock has two. Kirk has, what did we come up with the last time we counted them? Like 7 or something?
40.
A lot. It was a lot.
Yeah. So Scotty says, "It's now or never, Captain." And Kirk says, "Beam us aboard and go to maximum warp as soon as we're there." So we see the Enterprise moving away as the sun explodes. We can see the planet disintegrate. And Dan, that's how this episode ends.
So, Dana, you have some information about this episode you want to share with us.
Yeah, Dan. Mariette Hartley, who played Zarabeth, with hundreds of TV credits to her name, she was exceptionally well known during the 70s through the early 90s. She was also cast in the pilot for Roddenberry's sci-fi series Earth 2, where she had 2 belly buttons.
2, Dana, why?
Because Roddenberry was taking a jab at the censors who wouldn't let her show her belly button in this episode, Dan. So she made a handful of movies earlier in her career, including Marnie, which is a Hitchcock film, Marooned, Skyjacked, and The Magnificent Seven Ride. She has also been nominated several times for Emmy Awards and won one once for the made-for-TV movie Married. Dan, she's still alive and quite active at age 83.
Oh, we got to get her on the show, Dana.
Yeah. Dan, also, Sulu, Uhura, and Chekhov do not appear in this episode. Only Scotty appears, and it's only his voice that we hear. No other episode are only 3 regular members of the crew seen in person. So, Dan, do you have anything you want to add about this episode?
So, Dana, you were mentioning that how only 3 members of the crew were seen in person in this episode. This is also the only episode in the entire 3 years of the series that there are no scenes on the Enterprise.
Wow.
Also, Mr. Atos, so that's a reference to librarians having access to knowledge from A to Z. His name was A-T-O-Z. Thought that was kind of interesting.
Very clever.
And the writer, Jean Lizette Eroest, she was actually a UCLA librarian at the time that she wrote this script, so she knew about libraries. And then finally, Dana, the title for this episode, like several episodes from Star Trek, comes from Shakespeare's Macbeth. Act 5, Scene 5, Line 22. I just happen to know that off the top of my head. And all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, out, brief candle.
Wow, I'm impressed.
Just so you know, the other episodes with Shakespeare titles were Dagger of the Mind, The Conscience of the King, and By Any Other Name. That's all I got, Dana.
All right, Dan, thanks for that. Should we move on to themes and dilemmas?
Yeah, let's do that.
What do you have?
The dilemma, I think, Dana, is what would it be like to live a life of complete loneliness like Zarabeth? You know, I can't imagine not having friends to talk to, places to go, or, you know, plays, movies, concerts to see. It sounds almost like being in solitary confinement. I think it would be horrible and probably not an existence actually worth living.
Yeah, it sounds horrible.
Although some days I kind of wish that I didn't have to deal with other humans because some people suck, Dana.
Yeah, there's that.
How about a dilemma for you?
Don't piss off the librarian. I don't, it's, I mean, that librarian got pretty angry with Kirk and zapped him and everything. So But we asked the question, where would we go in our history? And how important is the present to us? McCoy states, I have a life I want to get back to. A lot of people say, oh, the 1920s, I would have loved to live in in that era, or I would have liked to have lived, when the West was wild and stuff, But all those times you think about it, so I think I'd rather be here.
Hey, Dana, how about if we talk about the best and worst of this episode?
Yeah, Dan, what do you have for best from this episode?
I thought the idea of a library where one could travel to the past was fascinating. I just love that idea, Dana. How about a best part for you?
The two different stories kept things moving and created more tension. Do you have another best part for us, Dan?
I think the ending where Spock and McCoy are talking is one of the best pieces of dialogue in the entire series, along with the city on the edge of forever. I thought it was really touching, really poignant. How about for you, Dana? Another best part?
Spock reverting to his emotional, more barbaric self. When we get those glimpses of him as being more human, being a little bit tougher, falling in love, all those things, I think that's it's neat to see. Dan, do you have a worst part for us?
I kind of mentioned this earlier, but the woman who Kirk saves near the beginning of the episode, I couldn't understand a damn thing she was saying, Dana. It was like I was trying to do one of those ye olde English accents. How about a worst part for you, Dana?
This could have easily been a 2-part episode. As it was, I felt like things were kind of crammed in to make it work. I think there was so much more you could have played with in this and stretched it out. So I kind of felt a little bit cheated that we didn't get more. Do you have another worst part for us, Dan?
Yes, and you brought this up. No Uhura, Sulu, Scotty, except his voice, or Chekhov. I kind of missed them in this episode. How about for you, another worst part?
As much as I liked Mariette Hartley, she seemed kind of waifish, and I didn't think that she would have survived at all in that environment.
Dana, why don't you tell us what happened on this day in history?
Dan, this episode was released on March 14th, 1969. The number one song in the U.S. has changed. It's now Dizzy by Tommy Rowe. And in the UK, it's your favorite, Where Do You Go to My Lovely by Peter Sarstedt. The only other real moment of note I have is that CBS renewed the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour for a third season.
Wow.
March 15th, though, President Nixon announced that he had approved the implementation of the Safeguard program, an anti-ballistic missile defense system that would protect American missile bases against direct attack by the Soviet Union. Also on March 15th, the Denver University Pioneers won the NCAA Hockey Championship, defeating Cornell University's Big Red 4-3 down in Colorado Springs.
Wow.
And finally, the U.S. Senate voted 83-15 to ratify the Treaty of the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, which had been signed in Geneva on July 1st, 1968 by the United States, the Soviet Union, and the United Kingdom. That's all I got, Dan. This podcast is being brought to you by North Shore. North Shore offers premium incontinence products that can improve your quality of life. Managing incontinence can feel like a no-win scenario. Local drugstores often have a lack of options or sizes, or have cheap products that leak. North Shore is way different.
Dana, incontinence affects over 13 million people in the United States alone. I have a close friend with multiple sclerosis who uses North Shore diapers to help him lead a normal life.
North Shore products can empower you to live your life on your terms by providing maximum absorbency that allows you to be dry and confident. It allows you to be you. And Dan, our listeners can use the code KIRK at checkout to receive $10 off their next order over $50. Go to northshore.com today.
Dana, how about if we do the counts?
There's not much to report, Dan, but let's go ahead.
We'll go through it really quickly. Dead crewman count.
0, still at 55.5.
Shirtless Kirk, rip shirt Kirk count.
0, still at 20.
The he's dead count.
Not a 1, still at 23.
I know this one's going to piss you off. I'm a doctor, not a fill in the blank.
Not a snowman? No, nothing this week. Yeah, his tally is still at 9.
How about the supreme being count?
No. So we are still at 12.
I think this one we got to talk about. Violation of the prime directive count.
And let's move on to taking over the Enterprise.
I think we got to talk about this one. What do you think, Dana?
Violation of the prime directive. Okay, tell me why.
Spock tells Zarabeth And Kirk tells Atos that they are from another planet. Zarabeth said that she had read such stories, but implied that she didn't think they were real, that they were just stories. So I think this counts.
Does one person make a society?
Yes. I mean, does it matter? Does it really matter?
She's in an ice age. There's nothing she can do. She's not going to tell anybody. She's not going to go suddenly develop warp drive.
I think you're splitting hairs, and I think you just don't want to pay up with the popcorn. That's what I'm thinking. How about this? Let's leave it up to our fans.
Okay.
So here's the deal, fans. You write in, email, YouTube comment, call. That would even be good. Send us a message on Facebook, something. You make a decision for us, and we'll go with the majority. How's that sound, Dana?
Sure. I'll work with that.
And then how about taking over the Enterprise count?
We're never on the Enterprise. Nothing happened there. We are still at 21.
And then finally, who's commanding the Enterprise?
The only voice we heard was Scotty, so I'd say we just had one, and that puts us at 59.
All right, Dana. Hey, I got to tell you, for season 3, I really like this episode, especially the end. As I mentioned, I thought it was very poignant.
Yeah, Dan, this episode almost seems like it belongs in season 2. It's so good.
Oh, that's a good point.
Once again, we've seen this ticking clock device that has always been really good for Star Trek, helps create a sense of urgency and higher drama. The Spock and McCoy interactions really carry the show. Kirk is pretty much secondary to the story. And as I said before, this could have easily been a 2-part episode, I think.
Yeah.
And would have been a better way to end the series.
Yes. Well, as we're going to find out next week. What do we have next week?
Dan, it's the very last episode of Star Trek, the original series, Turnabout Intruder.
Well, we're going to go out with a bang, I suppose. Well, Dana, hey, enjoy your weekend. This was a lot of fun talking with you about this episode. Had a great time.
Yeah, Dan, really had a good time. Always great to talk to you about Star Trek. So until we meet again, live long and prosper.
Thanks once again for listening to Damn It Jim, the podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Please send us an email at dammitjimpodcast@gmail.com or join the discussion on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, or X. You can also call the Damn It Jim hotline at 509-676-6298. Enjoy the rest of your week, and as always, remember to live long and prosper. This has been a Ramble Jar production.